Tell us the truth. Tell us the truth.
We mandate that the truth be told.
You're hearing it.
TNT.
Right, now I've spent the last hour talking about potential crisis in Europe, given that von der Leyen is up for election today, and what would happen if she gets ousted. I think it would be a massive crisis for the EU, but there are other crises as well. We're going to talk about Ireland today because there is a huge crisis which has been developing over many months now to do with immigration. And my guest to talk about that is Dr. Eoin Lenihan. He's an independent journalist and researcher. Welcome to the Freeman Report, Eoin.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you. So unfortunately, Ireland is making headlines for all the wrong reasons, as you pointed out. This has been building for a number of months, and this week we've seen some truly awful pictures of clashes between riot police and locals in Dublin who are trying to prevent the forced mass migration centre being built in their locality, one of many.
So, yeah, let's set the scene a bit, because I'm sure many of the viewers are aware broadly of the immigration problem. We're seeing immigration as a problem in many countries around the world. But give us set some context on what's been actually going on in Ireland over the past, I guess it's the past sort of year, isn't it?
Since January, it's really spiraled out of control. In the first 6 months of this year, we've seen an almost 100% increase in the number of people coming as IPAS claimants, so international protection or refugee status. A lot of that was initially due to the Rwanda deal in Britain, where a lot of solicitors or lawyers were telling their clients basically to hightail it to Ireland for safety. But the major problem is the Irish government have had a very ad hoc approach to the migrant crisis. And in fact, they're delivering more pulls rather than any effective deterrence. What we are expecting is up to 30,000 migrants to arrive this year, and there's no plan in place to deal with it.
Yeah, and just to put that in context, because that's roughly around the same sort of numbers that are coming across the English Channel. But of course, Ireland, compared to the UK, is quite a small country, isn't it?
Ireland had 20 years ago roughly a population of 4 million. It's now 5 million. We're getting to the point where it's we're at 22%, but rapidly rising. We're almost at the point where 1 in 5 people were born overseas. So this is a radical shift in demographics in Ireland in such a short period of time. And that's one of the exasperating factors here, is that we have already a massive cultural shift, a massive demographic shift. And down on top of this, we have this inept government response to a mass migration, illegal migration problem.
Yeah, now we have seen some trouble, as you said, in the last 6 months, and we'll talk about Coolock in a moment after the ad breaks at the bottom of the hour. But tell us what's been happening so far, because some hotels have been burnt down, and there has been unrest, haven't there, in the last 6 months?
Right. Since just before the new year, we'll say, there was a very prominent case in Roscahill, which is a tiny community in the west of Ireland. It's in County Galway, and a hotel was burnt down there in the middle of the night after ongoing protests against an unknown number of migrants who are to be shoehorned into that community. And that's symbolic. And there's been something like 20 burnings, I believe, in the past 6 months. But what's happened is that the government there has been zero to minimal communication with localities before they push large groups into these communities. So what's happening is that in the middle of the night or very early in the mornings, buses will simply show up to communities. Deals have been done with local hoteliers or maybe other large buildings, warehouses, whatever, but usually hotels. And the local community have no idea this is happening until the buses of migrants arrive. And so obviously that's going to lead to massive problems. In fact, it came out this week that there was a memo circulating within the government that warned that there would be significant breakdown in social cohesion and unrest if the government didn't get a handle on their migrant policy and change it. because what they've been doing is ramming through large numbers into communities. We saw earlier in April, I believe it kicked off May, actually, it's where it got violent in Newtown, Mount Kennedy in County Wicklow. That's where the first pictures really emerged of the police using baton charges, pepper spray against locals who simply came out to voice their opposition to these migrant centres being placed without their consent, without any consultation. And it's happening all across the country. And it's getting worse.
Yeah.
This week, it was announced there will be up to 30 major centres. It was announced this week that there will be up to 30 major centres. Again, unannounced. We don't know where they'll be, but these are major centres which will have more than 1,000 migrants in each one. And so these, again, will be rammed into close-knit communities without consultation. And if you disagree, you're going to get the sharp end of a police baton and a can of pepper spray.
Yeah, and just and we're going to take a break now, but just before we go, I'll just set the context in some of the scenes from Coolock. Those police look like they've got new sort of riot gear. They really did look like they were bolstered up. They had paddings. You know, we've all seen the riot police, but these had paddings all down the arms. So it looks to me like the Irish politicians are gearing up for a fight with the public. But we'll take a quick break now, and then, Eoin, you can tell us exactly what's happening on the ground.
TNTRadio.live.
Interestingly, before the break then, I did mention the fact that I observed that the police look to be in new riot gear, big, bolstered out, much more heavy sort of gear than we'd normally see. And then in the break, Eoin was saying, he was telling me about somebody called Drew Harris has actually taken over the police there. So Eoin, tell us about that.
Yes, that was very well noticed. In 2018, Drew Harris, he was the former deputy chief constable in Northern Ireland, so the PSNI. He took over. It was the first time that the police services, the Garda Síochána, as it's called in Ireland, they went outside of their own to recruit a head of police. Now, this guy has been accused of bringing very heavy-handed in the past week, especially since what we saw in Coolock, as you pointed out, the heavy dress, the aggressive baton charges, the liberal use of pepper spray and so forth. This he's been accused of importing from Northern Ireland, and a lot of people are saying that it's like the Troubles. This is the kind of policing that we saw in Northern Ireland during the height of the Troubles, where we had aggressive drive-bys by police vans, helicopters overhead. And this is absolutely shocking for Irish people to see from the Republic of Ireland. You know, Ireland is a very pastoral land. Ireland was, up until very recently, an incredibly safe country, one of the safest in the world. And so to see these kind of tactics being used against Irish people suddenly, it's very difficult for people to get their heads around this.
Yeah, I mean, what are the concerns?
I think what we saw also was that at the start.
No, go ahead, Eoin. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Oh, sorry, there was a little lag there. Sorry for butting in there, James. But just to go back to Newtown, Mount Kennedy about a month ago, we saw this already, this heavy-handed approach from the Minister of State, the Minister for Justice, Helen McEntee, who is backing Drew Harris heavily, that this was the first time we really saw the state employ these heavy-handed tactics, riot police, pepper spray. So that was seen as kind of a training ground for the violence we saw this week in Coolock. And this, we can assume, is going to be the pattern going forward, because the Justice Minister is heavily behind the police services here. And we see also in the national press that there's a lot of pro-government spin that these anyone who's protesting is far right, that they're low class, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, who are these people that is being used pepper spray against? Are these extremists, young men just coming out to riot? I mean, who are these people?
In most cases, there are people who are from the communities. In Coolock specifically, Coolock is one of the most socio-economically deprived areas in all of Ireland. It's actually the poorest area in Dublin, where they're pushing in this migrant centre. And we don't know how many it's going to be. The government have given no clear communication about how many are going to go in there. But if you look at the facility itself, it's an old Crown Paint storage warehouse. You could easily fit up to 3,000 migrants in there if you wanted. They're claiming it's going to be in the hundreds, but the lack of communication is making people frightened. for the past 3 months, there has been a camp, a 24/7 vigil outside the gates of this warehouse by locals. Locals have been there constantly keeping vigil to make sure that the state doesn't come in the middle of the night to ram in these beds, start works. And that these people had been badly slandered in the Irish and the international press over the past couple of months. They've been called far right. They're not. They're mothers, they're fathers, they're kids. This week, something that was particularly nasty that we saw was that the media focused, the Irish media focused heavily on some who were destroying police cars, and they were making snide comments about why were they here in the middle of the day, nothing to do. Well, the reason is it's one of the most deprived areas in the whole country. These people don't have jobs. In fact, when that Crown Paint factory shut down in 2016, 150 or so jobs were lost in the locality, and no jobs have come back in to replace it. And now what's happening? They're going to, instead of bringing new industry to replace it, they're going to just instead ram in however many hundred, maybe 1,000 migrants into an area that's already strained.
Yeah, absolutely shocking. I mean, on the positive, and maybe shining a light to those residents in Coolock, is we've got our own experience of this in Llanelli in Wales, where the residents camped outside and they actually won against the Home Office. It went on for about 4 or 5 months, and in the end, the local residents won and the Home Office backed down. So maybe local communities can make a difference. But listen, Eoin, where do you see this going? Because it's clear that public opinion widely across Europe, across Ireland now, is against the number of people coming in. I mean, that there's lots of polls being released which are showing that now, and overwhelming. So scenes like this, where the government is using police forces heavy-handedly against local residents, this isn't going to look good to the wider public across Ireland, no matter how the press try and spin it. So where does this end?
The issue right now is that the government feel that they're comfortable enough with their majority in power and the absence of a real alternative. Sinn Féin haven't offered a good opposition, that they can continue to bullheadedly ram through these policies. In my opinion, it's just going to guarantee more scenes like we saw this week in Coolock, more scenes like we saw in Newtown Mount Kennedy, in Clonmel, in all of these areas that this has happened. The major problem right now is that the media spin is working to a certain degree, because in Ireland, such a small nation, where, again, most newspapers are reliant on the government just to survive, just for advertising revenue and whatnot, that it has held public opinion. But I think it's changing, and it will change quickly, and especially now as these 30 massive migrant centres are dispersed around the country. And when people see it in their own backyard, they're going to say, wait, no. And as the Minister for Justice and the police react heavy-handedly, it's going to get out of control very quickly. Sadly, I see violence in the future. That's the only thing I can see for sure.
Yeah, it's very, very sad, isn't it? Because none of us actually want to see violence. But then again, when your governments do this kind of thing to your communities, then sometimes violence is the only way. And actually, I think this is going to be such a huge thing. Particularly, I wasn't aware of these 30 centres that the government's planning to put in. I think this could cause civil unrest across the country of Ireland. So it could be the first example of a country pushing back and actually winning against the government. That would be, I guess, the only positive coming out of any violence, which obviously we don't want to see on the streets. Thank you so much for providing that insight. Dr. Eoin Lenihan, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on the Freeman Report.